bunch of misfits I ever said either.
Good morning, Misfits. You are tuning in to another episode of the Misfit podcast. On today's episode, we have a 2-for-1 special. If you are an athlete and you want to know how to get better at pulling or pressing gymnastics, we're going to talk you through that. And if you're a coach, we're going to take you through our audit, plan, and execute matrix, way to systemize thinking relating to getting people better at basically anything. This one is kind of set up for this specific scenario, but a lot of the nuances will apply across the board to different things. So that part of it will be fun. Before that, we'll do a little bit of housekeeping, do a little bit of live chat, and then jump right in. Housekeeping, super straightforward. Head to the link in bio on Instagram to get signed up for any of our individual programs. You can get signed up on Fitter or Strivey. If you are looking for our affiliate programming, you can head to teammisfit.com, click on the sign up now button, and you get a 2-week free trial at SugarWOD, StreamFit, or Push Press. We are officially 100% moved from Discord to Telegram. I should have I actually made a list. Let's see if I can find it really quick or not. Did I name it? I'm not very good at naming sheets. I have a lot of untitled sheets.
That is, you'd think that wouldn't be a problem with the largest search engine in the world, but who'd have thought
dude,
that
it's
search
so
functions
bad.
in
It's
Google Drive
crazy how bad it is, man.
Might as well be Ask Jeeves in like 1994.
Yes, I found it. All right. Shout out to Gus, Paolo, Chad, Adrian, Kyle, Seamus, Tammy, Pete, Jason, Ashley, Nate, Brock, and Katie. Everyone was super cool about me being like, hey, you guys are our VIPs, MVPs on these posting platforms, and if you move, others will join you. So thank you to everyone for being cool about it, and we're always open to feedback. And one of the things that someone requested was like, you should tell everyone why you're making the move, basically like our feedback to Discord, I guess. And from an admin standpoint, an automation standpoint, and a file sharing standpoint, it sucks. It's cool that we had all the different channels and everything like that, but you have to do these weird things called nitro boosts to have certain things show up, and it's just a really weird tiered payment system. Telegram is basically just stripped down and more straightforward. And I know people are kind of getting used to it as we go, but there's like been a lot of action in there in the last week, and that's just like, thank you to everybody who made that happen and the other people who are participating. If you cannot find the link, just let us know. Reach out on social. Email me, coach@misfitathletics.com, and we will get that to you. So yeah, we are completely moved. I am working on what we do with the Discord, and is there a way to archive certain things related to that? But I am going to, in the near future, shut it down to the point where you can't post to it anymore, because I just don't want to, every week go check and see if somebody is screaming into the abyss. Also on Fitter, there are communities, and there are some pretty good conversations there. But if you want to open up the, group of people that you're talking to, I would say only like 10% of our users use the communities feature. Keep using it if you want to. I'm always on there, happy to answer questions. I like sort of eavesdropping on you guys' conversations, but Telegram will definitely be the place to kind of make that happen. So yeah, I think that's basically it. Live chat.
We have, do we want to, is it talking about CAMP yet?
Oh, holy fuck. What's wrong with me? Thank you, Hunter.
Oh, you're welcome.
All right. We have a big announcement. Maybe you saw it on social media. Maybe you didn't. Maybe you got the email from me. Maybe you didn't. We are going to be at CrossFit Roots for camp January 30th through February 1st. That is in Boulder, Colorado. If you're on the fence and then you're like, hey, why don't we go snowboarding on Monday? Hit me up. We'll talk about that. But yeah, we're going to, I know that there's sort of like a lot of CrossFit HQ influence in that area. And Nicole is someone who's been involved in the community for a really long time, and is someone who uses Misfit affiliate at her gym. And we've sort of shouted them out before, talking about, it kind of feels like that's the kind of place that carries the same kind of standard that we try to do here, which I think is rare when you look at the community at large. So not only is Boulder, Colorado just a really fucking cool place, really great food in that time of year. Like if you come to Maine and it's just always dark and fucking overcast in winter and you're stepping in slushy puddles, but if you go to a like picturesque mountain town kind of a situation, it's got a different vibe.
Is it going to be snowing? in Boulder, Colorado at that time of year?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Got it, right.
But it could also be like 55 degrees.
Okay.
I went to college 30, 40 minutes north of there, and you'd get snow and it would be gone the next day, kind of melt, like that kind of thing. The weather, honestly, at elevation can be anything.
Yeah.
At any time. So yeah, we are. It's in the link in bio on Instagram. You'll be taken to the kind of the event page. We've got some information there. If you are on the fence, another, DM me, coach@misfitathletics.com via email. I've had some people reach out and ask if it's a good situation for coaches. I kind of joke that like we're not athletes, so camp it almost is more for coaches just because of the way that we think and communicate. But you'd have to look at it through that lens. Honestly, today's episode is maybe an interesting exploration into, like, if I'm listening to this, am I trying to get better at strict pulling, or not strict pulling, but pulling gymnastics, pressing gymnastics, or am I trying to get someone else better at it? Those are just two different lenses to absorb similar information. And like I would, if I was like starting a new gym or something like that, one of the first things that I would want to happen is to just make a camp happen so that my entire coaching staff could come to camp and just see the way that it's not just the movements, but it's also the way that we communicate with people, the way that we sort of break certain things down, that kind of deal. So if you are a coach, it's funny. People ask like, if I don't follow the programming, can I come to camp? If I'm a coach and not an athlete, can I come to camp? If I'm more of just a fan of all of this, like I'm a nerd on it, like all of those, camp is very much for those people. And I like to say that it is a very unique situation to be in a room with that many like-minded individuals. That is my favorite part of camp. I like the idea of getting our programming out to as many people as possible, and our whatever services that we have out to as many people as possible. But I thrive when I am coaching someone who really cares, or talking to another coach who is like all in on this concept. And I think it's hard to find, you go out into an affiliate and you got to pick out the like couple of people that are like that in any given class. You show up at a camp like this and every single person that's there is very much into something that is very similar to you. And that can just be like, I don't know, just a really cool thing and a way to motivate yourself from whatever perspective.
Yeah, I think we've been to a lot of places camp wise. Probably, I feel like Roots is like, as much of like a CrossFit mecca as you kind of get, as far as like
definitely a destination
with
gym
an OG,
and city.
Yeah, gym, destination, city, coaching staff too. You really can't miss. And then my love helping athletes of all varieties, whether you're a competitive athlete or, an affiliate athlete, just trying to get better at something. But from the coaching perspective, it's like I'm just kind of an ardent believer in like the CrossFit methodology being the foundation that all of us kind of branch out from, whether or not your goal is kind of the long-term health that CrossFit was originally kind of touted for, or maybe dipping your toe into the more like competitive sports side of fitness. Understanding CrossFit at the most base level, I think, is necessary for both of those people and the coaches. So I'm excited to just go to a place that, has that like just kind of ingrained as like a baseline of like coaches understand this stuff. We try to teach the members this sort of stuff, and then hopefully we can bring a slightly different perspective, and then also kind of take it even a step further for the athletes who want to treat CrossFit like a competitive sport. Yeah, should be a great time.
Early bird pricing is up now. I believe I set it to the end of November in terms of us figuring out the exact coaching staff, how many coaches we're bringing. It is really helpful for us, if financially viable, for you to basically buy it now, into November, that kind of thing. For anyone who's used to our typical camp pricing, us having to travel 2,000 miles basically added like $40 to $50 to your ticket price, just to kind of be transparent. So it's, just costs a little bit more money for us to get out there. It's really important to me that we bring the right staff, the right size of staff, all of that stuff. So I honestly don't think we've ever had someone be like, that was not worth the money that we paid. We've definitely had a lot of people being like, you should charge $1,000 for that. That kind of thing. So So yeah, I don't know how the fuck that slipped my mind, but very exciting announcement. And people ask all the time, we want to be able to do 1 to 3 camps a year. And a lot of it just comes down to the planning of, what HQ does and where our athletes are going and what the landscape looks like and all that stuff. So it's exciting to be getting back into it. I hope to see all of you guys there. Link in bio. I think it's right at the top right now. It's one of the top ones. Training camp at Roots. Early bird pricing is available for another month or so. And then you got to pay $50 more after. Now we are on to live chat. What you got going on?
I played golf so poorly on Sunday that I booked a lesson in the middle of my round.
That's just great.
Like, it's kind of fun. I don't remember who I was talking to about it, but and I might even just be repeating myself. Maybe I was talking to the podcast about this. But I went through a stage, or have gone through a stage of saying to myself, like, I don't understand the affiliate level athlete who wants to get better at CrossFit for the sake of getting better at CrossFit. It doesn't compute with me, because I think of, in my current state, I think of CrossFit as purely the one workout I do. It's like just kind of part of the habit of the day, or part of the routine for the day. Get my workout in, move along. I know I did something good for my health. But the idea of like proactively doing like more than the class in order to get better at it, I'm like, I don't understand this. Like, it's been a long enough time for me that I no longer understand the desire to get better at it. Having started a new kind of athletic endeavor in golf, I now understand why people, or kind of have been reminded why people spend extra time, extra money on a personal training, or whatever it happens to be. They're dedicating personal resources in order to get better at this thing that, like, now that I'm talking about this, I do feel like I said this on the podcast, but it's like, in order for me getting better at golf does nothing for my life other than makes me personally feel good, whatever motivation that is, whether it's egotistical, competitive in nature, whatever. But it's like why did I spend money to go teach me like how to get better at golf? And it's like, well, like, I guess, do I need a reason? Like, it brings happiness. Like, playing good golf is more fun than playing bad golf. And it's just like, it kind of got me down the rabbit hole of like a little bit of athlete psychology of like, why do people, like, what motivates somebody to like get better at something is kind of it was kind of a weird rabbit hole for me. But as I was like in the moment, extremely frustrated after playing well on Saturday, very much a Jekyll and Hyde kind of weekend. And I'm like, why the fuck? Like, okay, you suck. Great. Here's a lesson inbound. You're going to book it and pay for it in the middle of the round that you're playing poorly, and then go do it. And it kind of made me think. I was like, why do people spend the time and the money getting better at something that isn't necessarily going to do anything for them, like from a utility perspective, other than maybe just like it's satisfying, it brings personal satisfaction, achievement, whatever it is. I don't know if my question's making any sense, but the long and the short is
no, it makes perfect sense, but it's so easy for me to push back on. It's grow or die. We don't have the same opportunities to challenge ourselves that we used to. Life used to be significantly more challenging. Like the hermetic response to I'm frozen because I'm outside, or I'm boiling hot because I'm outside, or if I'm not fit enough to find my fucking food, then I'm gonna die. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. And we can.
You're talking big picture, like
I'm
life
talking.
Is
Yeah,
easier.
I'm talking. Yeah, life is easier. It's easier in different ways, obviously, and harder in different ways. But if things are working properly, you should be motivated to. Like, that's one of the main points of like testosterone. It's like you should be motivated to improve yourself, and part of that is just the challenging of yourself to prove to yourself that you can overcome adversity. You are learning, you are training yourself for a moment when you literally need to overcome actual adversity. So I think the challenging, people finding ways in modern society to challenge themselves is incredibly important for maintaining survival, because we know, there's the reason why you have the giant head aliens with like the tiny arms, whether someone made that up or saw it. Do we dare go down that road again? Is the concept that we're going to get really fucking smart and not be very physical beings. But you can also take a look at modern society and be like, I see a lot of shrinking heads and larger bodies.
A lot of heads for
tiny
bodies
heads,
and
huge
arms
bodies.
for heads.
Yeah. So I think it's the battle against that. It's the battle against, I eat absolute dog shit and I, basically just watch TV and I don't do anything, and I, maybe collect, a check. I don't work. You know what I mean? Like just this version of a human that's like parked on a couch.
So you think it's more based on like a desire to improve at something difficult?
Yeah, and to be challenged. Yeah, because it still is. I mean, CrossFit is a hermetic stressor. Like that's obvious, right?
Yeah.
But there's definitely stuff going on with doing the same thing. Golf is very mental, very like understanding the mind-body connection, that kind of thing. And if you want to get into like the philosophical reason, it's like light and dark, good and bad, rain or shine, I feel good, I feel bad. There's people think that they want to be happy all of the time, or that like a 2-minute Fran would be easy or whatever. It wouldn't. It would suck. It would be boring. You would have no juxtaposition to create the idea.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
Those are very clear reasons to me why people would do that. And then I also just get a kick out of like hunters. I don't think you guys ever have to worry about Hunter coming on here and spouting a bunch of bullshit to you, like because he's like my livelihood relies on selling the things that I don't even understand why people buy them. I fucking love that. No, it's great. It's hilarious.
I mean, it wasn't meant to be that. It was more like, well, now the end of the story says I actually do fully understand it, and like good on you. Yeah. And it's like, but I won't bullshit you. But to be clear, like if you're not doing CrossFit, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah. If you're not doing CrossFit and signing up for camps and paying for remote coaching,
also
and buying a lot
things.
of t-shirts, then I don't think we can help you. I hope you know
that
we're joking when we say that. All right, what do I have? My life is wild right now, and I won't fully divulge publicly all that is going on in my life right now, but Operation Dad Bod is... It's not in a holding pattern, but like, holy shit.
It would be an understandable holding pattern.
Yeah. It's a holding pattern. It's not intentional though, is I think what I'm hoping gets me like brownie points for myself.
Anti-regression
back
pattern.
In my own good graces. But we're working through it. My back is just such a problem, and there's a lot of really good research on what happens to stuff like that when you're under high levels of stress. Basically, your nervous system
mixes it right up, does it?
Yeah. Being in fight or flight all of the time makes your back feel really good.
Yeah, makes sense.
Recommendation:
tight as light, as they say.
Don't sleep. Drink this.
That's not like your entire nervous system, like in your back.
Yeah, and then the Steelers did not play. We talked about, it was basically the opposite
Can't
scenario.
win, don't play.
Yeah, exactly. Can't lose.
The
Red Sox, that was fun. They beat the Yankees in game 1, which was awesome. And I had talked about like a fragile franchise could crumble. And they honestly tried to. The Red Sox could have and should have won game 2 to end it, and then had no business even being on the field with the Yankees in game 3. So it was fun. I think it caused the Yankees a little bit of panic, which is nice. They are getting their asses handed to them by the Blue Jays, which is beautiful. So we'll take that. But it was fun to get into playoff baseball. And then also, this is blasphemous, but kind of fun that I don't have to like deal with that, like figure out how to make time to sit in front of my television for 3 hours.
Like 4.5 hour baseball
exactly.
game. Yeah.
Well, luckily, so they do...
Oh, the pitch clock.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
3 hours.
Yeah, it's like a 3 hour game now. Like regular season is like 2.5 hours. It's also not just the pitch clock though. relief pitchers have to throw to a minimum of 3 batters. So when we used to watch Red Sox Yankees playoff games, they'd probably be like 5 hours long because lefty specialist comes in, righty comes in, and every time they're coming out and warming up, and like it's crazy to be at those games. Yeah. Because like as the tension builds, everything slows way fucking down. So playoff baseball is much more digestible now. And I just have to assume that unless something goes wrong.
As a longtime baseball fan, do you support these changes, or are you more of a traditionalist and like fucking let it last?
Definitely. I love baseball. Baseball is like religion in my family. I am also like ADD kid. And like,
got shit to do.
I guarantee you, I was watching crows attack a hawk long enough to miss a fly ball at least once, and like as an adult or as like a late teenager. And then obviously just as a kid, it's fucking either really exciting or very fucking boring. Sure. So I definitely support that stuff. The robot umps are coming next year. So they've tested that in the minor leagues. So like I'm up to bat and there's an egregious balls and strikes call. I can tap my helmet and the robot will immediately say like they were right or wrong. It's kind of like a challenge, that kind of thing. But it's done completely by technology.
There's still physical umpires though behind home plate.
Yeah, they're calling balls and strikes the whole game, but only so right now the challenge system is basically before the next pitch is thrown, I believe the team has to say that it's a challenge, and then they do the whole video review bullshit. This
also
is
be a limit on challenges.
On field. This is on field only. So batter, pitcher, catcher are the only people that can challenge. And then obviously, so that will be hilarious if like someone with a massive ego ruins their team's challenges because the coach doesn't really factor into it unless you can like sneak a quick glance at your coach and he tells you to tap your helmet, like that kind of thing. So that'll be fucking fascinating.
Interesting.
Yeah. All right. So today's episode for the athlete, how do I get better at, how do I master, how do I figure out pulling and pressing gymnastics? Obviously there's a list there, your toe to bar, your pull up, your bar muscle up, your ring muscle up. On the pulling side, your rope climbs and your legless rope climbs. And then on the pressing side, kind of part of the family is your wall walk and your handstand walk, but we're probably going to be talking a little bit more about the handstand push-up variations when it comes to this stuff. And on the coaching side, we are, I'll sort of put it out there, I'm testing the waters a little bit, so I'm working. It's been a long time coming, and it's still probably still a little bit more runway, but I'm kind of testing out how you guys feel about us doing educational content for coaches. We talked about sort of the idea related to camp, like those are our people, that's our brethren. And I really like, my end goal in my career is to coach coaches. That is really what I want to do. So online courses, mentorships, teach people how to program, teach people how to like basically pass on the information that we've learned over time. And today is just an example of sort of testing the waters related to that. So you guys can, as always, you guys let us know both from the athlete side and the coaching side what you think of this stuff. And basically what I am looking at right now, and I'll pull it up on the screen, figure out technology. Let's see. We're going to try to do a good job of making sure that if you're not watching on YouTube, that we're explaining what is happening on the screen here. So what I'm looking at right now is the audit, plan, and execute matrix. So column A, running vertically, we have 3 rows, audit, plan, and execute. And these are very much in order. And then from left to right, basically the top of the matrix, we have mobility, stability, strict variations, low rep, skill/capacity, intervals, and metcons. And the idea here is we would start in that top left corner. We're going to be auditing the mobility and stability, and then we're going to work our way left to right, and then we're going to come up with a plan, and then we're going to talk about kind of the execution phase of those things. Again, from the coaching perspective, when you have frameworks like this, not only do you, not like leave things out, forget certain levels of it, you can also communicate really well to your athlete, to your coaching staff, and to other people what you are trying to do. Because one of the things that happens, definitely more so with me and the way that I think and execute versus Hunter, but both of us, is like we can just tell you from our experiences what to do out loud in real time. And then is it documented? Is it teachable? Is the person going to remember what you said? That sort of thing. So in an effort to sort of teach and pass these things along, this is one of the things that can be really helpful.
Yeah, and I think that like that kind of framework is always helpful, and I think the order of things that we have here is also like really useful, because there is kind of like, to my initial point in when we were talking about camp, is like, you know, we're maybe talking to an athlete of any ability level, right? But like affiliate athlete all the way to games athlete, like the foundational kind of first principles stuff remains the same. It's like if you don't have access and stability, so mobility and stability, like it doesn't matter if you're top 20 in the world in the CrossFit Open or trying to do an RX workout at your affiliate, like the requirement's the same, right? There's just a different level of capacity that you expect from a different type of person. And a lot of times the conversations are really the same. You get athletes who want to perceive themselves as whether it's a competitor or somebody who is working towards that sort of kind of down that path, like that there is no difference in the requirement. There might be a difference as far as how I as a coach communicate with that athlete, but the end goal is still going to be the same. What the words that I use and the you know, the vernacular and stuff might be different, but the end goal is all the same. And we're all working off the same kind of, like, again, like the foundational principles in order to build capacity, and especially like gymnastics movements.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So we are looking at the first block in our matrix here. We are in the audit phase. As the coach, we're looking at things and trying to gather as much information as we can. And we're always going to start with mobility and stability. So in a perfect world, you are working with an athlete in person. And it's like, I want to do a personal training session. Let's head into the gym. Let's take a look. These sort of audits in singular form can very much be done in an affiliate setting as well. I think that's really important to sort of put out there. But I want to see someone definitely from the bar first. We might not know necessarily what someone's goals are. But the bar and the rings, I want to see a dead hang and I want to see kip swings. I want to see how someone holds on to a bar and rings. Is their pinky knuckle on top? Are they wrapping their thumb or not? Is there tension in the elbow? Is there tension in the shoulder? Are we drawing this nice, beautiful straight line? Is that rib cage broken? Like, you can really learn a lot from someone in the most basic setting. And it's really imperative not to really coach much during a lot of these audit things unless you're worried about safety. Like, again, my guys, I'm thinking more along the lines of someone comes to me and they want to get better at something that they can already do. Hunter, a lot of the time, is going to be like, can we hang from a pull-up bar? Like that kind of thing. So I know that it's, you know, I think we'll probably bounce back and forth a little bit from that. But then I would move on to, like, how are you moving in relation to the object? It's very different. Someone might have a really good understanding of... and a lot of people don't, the kip swing on the pull-up bar and what drives that and what it looks like. That's when we can really get a look at some mobility, that kind of thing. You know, it's all good and fun that someone can have that dead hang, but when we get into the hollow arch, what is that starting to look like? And then getting a little bit more into technique, but you can really learn something about someone's body awareness when they don't have the fixed object and are kipping on the rings.
Yeah. A quick question is for clarification on this. Do you want to do like broad kind of bullet points? Because I see you've got pulling and pressing in the mobility stability cell. Or are we going to do like an example movement as we go here? Or more broad?
We'll keep it broad to the family of pulling and pressing, because I think we can use concepts and teach over kind of a broader scale.
Okay. Yeah, I think that, like, and as a coach, the way that you almost delineate these two things, and this is, you know, how you would not say, like, hey, I want to get better at you would not have an athlete come in and say, hey, I want to get better at squatting. And you say, okay, like, let's see 315, hit me up. What do you got?
Sure.
Right? It's like, okay, let's look at your air squat with a pause. Like, what does the bottom position of your squat look like? You need to take this, and this is the same way that I like to warm affiliate athletes up for class, right? It's like you start by assessing static positions, right? So like the bottom of a squat, does the athlete have, like the things you said, the body awareness, the kinesthetic awareness to just like know where they're at in space? Hey, hey, Tommy, do you know that you are like 6 inches above parallel? Do you know that your arches are collapsed? Do you know that your elbows are bent as you're hanging from the bar? Always start, I like to, with the static positions. And like you said, like you can't oversimplify it. Like just hanging from a pull-up bar, I could see like, hey, we're going to talk about toes to bar, been to a hang from the pull-up bar in a hollow position. The athlete hops up, their thumbs over the bar, their rib cage is broken. They don't really have any concept for what, a hollow position actually looks like. Maybe they're just dangling from the ground. And like, you would be very, or maybe not at all surprised at like, especially an athlete who maybe hasn't been coached before or doesn't go to an affiliate with grade A coaching. It's like, they don't know what they don't know. And starting with the static positions is like, that's just raw baseline, right? Same thing with pressing. It's like a handstand hold. If I see you kick up into a handstand hold and your chest is pointed at the floor in an overextended position, like I know what's coming. But you need to, like, an athlete might think to themselves like, yeah, I can do a handstand hold, nothing wrong with this. And it's like, actually everything's wrong with this. And like I already know, I'm not going to tell the athlete, but like in my head I'm like, okay, I probably know what I'm going to see here, 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 and here. And you can kind of almost like, you don't want to get ahead of yourself and just kind of know it all, but like at least probably what to expect, and you can get better at assessing and correcting. So always think like, do the static stuff first, hang from the pull-up bar, get into a handstand hold, get on top of, what's the dip position look like on the rings, whatever it is. But the stationary stuff, then, like you said, go to the kip swings, right? Go from the handstand hold to the actual wall walk, make the athlete move dynamically. And what maybe was a really sound static position all of a sudden falls apart when you start to move because the athlete doesn't have body awareness, doesn't have like the coordination or whatever. And it's like a lot of times those are like the foundational problems that athletes have versus something like crazy down the line.
Yeah, and I'm definitely, this is the way that I'm going to address all of this stuff is going to turn this into like an 8-part series, but I think it's worth it. So 2 things that come into mind. As an affiliate coach, you can build in like half of this into a warm-up without even telling people, right? I'm thinking of like...
Yeah, I mean, that's how I do it.
Like you guys do the scat pull-ups, and then we do some kipping, and then it's like, hey, let's get, potentially get some strict or banded stuff worked in. Let's, one other thing that would be really important here at a higher level would be changing the grip on the pull-up. Like I know for me personally, after years of baseball and football throwing, like palms facing is, it hurts my elbows.
That's funny. We did that today we did clean and jerk toes to bar, and it's like that supinated grip is really telling of somebody's ability to externally rotate the shoulders. Somebody who hangs from a pull-up bar like this with their palms facing each other, like I'm willing to bet that their front rack looks something like, like this. Just stab myself in the eye. But like once you can start to pick up an important thing here too is like, as a coach, having an understanding of all of these, the kind of anatomical descriptions of what's going on, right? It's like an athlete who does a kip swing and their elbows bend as they get into kind of that arch position. It's like, well, that's a compensation mechanism for a lack of shoulder rotation, unless it's just a body awareness thing, right? But like understanding how joints are supposed to be moving, what their like ranges are, and that could be as far as like understanding like a physical therapy, like kind of like, hey, this is what normal range of motion is, right? And like, so if this is hindered in any way, like, someone who lacks internal shoulder rotation is probably going to have trouble locking the bar out overhead, is going to have trouble in that arch position in the kip swing, is probably going to be overextended when they get up against the wall because they're going to compensate for a lack of range of motion somewhere. Athletes are exceptionally good at working around things that they don't have. They don't have yet.
Yeah, and the other piece that came to mind, because it's the lecture that I'm working on right now, is intuition in coaching. We cannot and will not give, by definition, examples for everything that you could possibly see in a handstand hold, in a dead hang, in a kip swing. And partially that's because if you filled out this entire matrix for one movement, would you want there to be, 20,000 words? That would be a little convoluted. And the other reason is it's like a cornerstone of the things that I want to preach in the educational content is intuition is so fucking important as a coach. And we've had this conversation before, Hunter, but it's just, there's a certain kind of coach that wants a by the book definition of a thing, when human movement and the way that the body works, and even the context in which, who are we talking to? What are they trying to accomplish? There's too many ways for that to spider out into, a million scenarios, that we need to be willing to sort of trust all of the information that we've been fed and what that could mean in a particular moment.
Yeah, for sure. I think that like as a coach, you need to have the kind of textbook understanding of what's going on, but a very conservative application of that as far as like when you're communicating to an athlete, right? They don't need the by the book thing. They need right. You to translate the book into their language based on what they want.
Right. All right. So to put a period on this, before we move over to strict variations, we want to see someone doing the absolute basic concept related to the movement that we're looking for down the line. Dead hang, kip swings, a handstand hold, facing the wall, facing away from the wall, a wall walk. We can learn a lot about what we're working with. And, you can blow people's minds with the like, oh, it's actually not your mobility. Please stop staring at the floor. Like, tuck your chin. Wow, these are easy now. Great. Let's move on, like that kind of thing. So we're going to take a look at that first. As we move on now, I'm going to want to take a look at these strict variations even before we get into seeing the, typically core-to-extremity type movement. And that is going to help with, it's like a bridge. We have mobility, which would give us, sort of the opportunity to become stable. And then that becomes a bit of a barrier to entry to having real strength related to a movement. Like that's the order that I usually think in things about. So I want to see the way that you do a strict pull-up, the way that you do a strict handstand push-up facing in both directions, the way that you do a strict ring dip, right? Like someone who sort of falls apart under intensity in a muscle up, and then you see them doing a strict ring dip and it's like, the ribs are shaking. Okay, this is making a whole lot more. Things aren't perfect. Things break down because we don't have either the mobility, the stability, or the actual strength to be able to do so.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think this one is like where, again, thinking about the range of athletes who might be trying to do this, it's like the difference here might be a CrossFit Games athlete who does their strict pull-ups with a super broken midline position. They're leaning back, they bend their knees, their feet are behind them, that sort of thing, versus, I'm an affiliate athlete, I want to get a bar muscle up, but I don't have a strict pull-up. And it's like, okay, we don't need to go much further than this before we start to plan and execute the idea of like, hey, this is actually not maybe an actual strength thing, probably a combination of strength and nutrition, right? You carrying around excess body weight that is making and we're talking about gymnastics today, so that has to be a huge part of the conversation, right? We don't need to get too far down the road, but that's just at baseline. Like,
yeah, of course.
If you are carrying around excess body weight and don't have the strict capacity to perform just the foundational strict movements, the dip, the push up, the pull up, it's like I'm not even going to go that much further down the dynamic, the core to extremity kind of components, kipping and stuff like that, because it's like we're now just trading off like safety for the goal of just like this random movement. So, but yeah, the strict, again, I think about that if you kind of, again, maybe attach it to or associate it with a weightlifting movement, for example. This is where I'm like, okay, we've demonstrated a good air squat. We've demonstrated the pause in the bottom of the squat, whatever. Now let's put a little bit of weight on the bar, but I still want you to pause in the bottom. Tempo down, pause in the bottom, stand up. Do you have, again, applying all those same things, but we just have a little bit more intensity in the fact that there's a loading component to it. But it's still, front squat, as soon as we add weight, the hips go back, the elbows drop. We can learn a lot by just going kind of slowly, and never, as a coach, never hesitate to force an athlete to pause pause,
slow
down, be static in a position, go slower. For as much shit as people give the old PVC pipe, the number of athletes who just don't move particularly well when you slow them down and force them to work on, think about what they're doing is higher than you would think.
And there's the other lens in which I would look at this from is if we fast forward out to the end and an athlete is semifinals level, CrossFit Games level, and they have a weakness in one of these movements, sort of under fatigue, it's usually pretty fucking obvious if someone learned their first variation of one of these movements just trying to get one fucking rep kipping.
Yeah.
And as we're going through this stuff, you can teach them really how to understand gymnastics concepts within strict movements and completely remap the way that they're doing these movements. So like I have people who would just absolutely crush and annihilate that first column, mobility, stability. Then we get into strict variations and they use their biceps and they break their midline to do a strict pull-up. I mean, we see that like all of the time. And it was funny because we got this beautiful display of it one year at Wadapalooza. You have these athletes who are, pretty good at like pulling gymnastics in a kipping form in high rep. But you look over and you see someone like Alex Smith, who's basically holding like a slight pike and using, pulling down with his back. And then you see athletes who are, barely gripping onto the bar and they're breaking at the chest and they're getting back behind the bar, which, makes it all bicep. You get into the strict handstand push-ups and someone can hold this beautiful position and they do like a really slow negative and try to like bounce on their neck and hope that somehow that gets them back up, which it'll do for a couple of reps, but you're not really going to make it very far in that. Or they're breaking at, really kind of chest pointing out or their butts up against the wall. And a lot of these things are exacerbated even more when you're facing the wall and like a wall facing thing. Like you see a lot of people who you can't really figure out in real time why they wouldn't be good at this thing because they might be like a puller or a presser from a genetic standpoint and they're still not good at it. Take a look at their strict movement and it will tell you a lot. It's like, This is all fucking like, there's a reason why their forearms and their biceps always feel like they're going to fall off. Like, what are we putting tension on? How are we doing that? So at all levels, these strict variations, even if we got to pull out the band, can be really helpful in figuring things out. All right, moving on to low rep. Essentially what we're saying is, again, affiliate context is super easy. Hey, jump up. Why don't you give me a few reps? Just show me your toes to bar. Show me your chest to bar. Show me these things. And that is when we are, in a lot of instances, auditing the like core-to-extremity concepts, the way that someone moves when they're becoming a little bit more dynamic. And again, there are stricter variations of these things. There's still the strict handstand push-ups. The legless rope climb is going to be one where there's like a lot of strict strength that's required, but there actually still is a lot of core-to-extremity if you're doing the legless rope climb properly. So a movement audit of the thing that we're trying to get better at, basically. Toe to bar, chin over bar, chest to bar muscle up, ring muscle up, rope climb, legless rope climb, handstand push-up variations, that kind of thing. How do you move in general without digging into at all like one bigger set, repeated sets, anything like that? Hey, why don't you jump up and give me 3? Like that kind of thing. That's what I want to see.
Yep. Not a whole lot to add there.
So one important thing here, as we're moving left to right, we talked about this before we hit record, is we might not make it all the way left to right. Like there's a lot of people who you can get to a, crazy enough skill. Honestly, it's everyone. Every single person, there is going to be, maybe it's ridiculous and it's backflips, but like there is a skill where it's like, if I roast you on an echo bike and then ask you to go do freestanding handstand push-ups or whatever, that gives us context for the entire spectrum of athlete. Whereas some might be like, we finally got a toe to bar, but like we're not putting those bad boys in metcons yet. Like that's crazy. Yeah. So at a certain point, as we're working left to right here, you will stop and drop down to plan mobility, stability, plan strict variations, plan low rep, that kind of thing. But we're just going to sort of keep going as if we're checking those boxes there. So if we have seen the ability to express mobility and stability and the person can do strict variations and they've shown us a few low rep and it's good enough, we can get into building skill and capacity. And those aren't always going to be like, they could be basically extending a skill session from what we just talked about with low rep. That would be like the low end of, okay, you've shown me your, 2 or 3 reps here. Every 2 minutes, you're going to keep doing that. And we're going to keep an eye on it and see if the coaching that we're having in that moment can kind of move it forward, that kind of thing. Capacity would be our standard recommendation here, which is going to be, again, more in kind of the planning phase. But we would be watching you do an EMOM. We would be watching you. We would be auditing the way that you move once we introduce volume. And I don't want to get too much. My mind always wants to go to the programming side, but we're still taking a look at this. What happens when your set of 3 becomes another set of 3 and becomes another set of 3? How do you change the way that you move? Or is it the same? That sort of thing.
And to be clear, we're now we're just asking watching an athlete in this phase to accumulate, not an egregious volume, but sure. I need to see that. So the way that I'm kind of envisioning this as well from an affiliate coach perspective is kind of the mechanics consistency intensity side, right? So it's the mobility, stability, and strict stuff is foundational mechanics. Do you have any idea where your limbs are in space? Do you have any idea what midline control actually is, where your scapular control, are there restrictions otherwise that are just preventing you from doing the movement mechanically correct? You get into low rep in the skill, and this is where I'm asking you, hey, you said you can do 10 muscle ups. Does the 10th rep look like the first rep? And if not, how much different does it look like? And this is where I think, assuming that you have that first component, the mechanics part, lots of athletes are going to live in this kind of consistency development stage for a long time, right? And this is it's also iterative, right? You're going to not asking you to only do low intensity EMOMs until you can do 50 muscle ups, and then we'll do intensity, right? It's a balance of both. It's kind of almost like a GPP application of skill development, but in general, this low rep and the skill capacity kind of legs here are where we want you to accumulate reps. And as a coach, where you're watching athletes, where, at what point, it's okay, he's good for 10 muscle ups, but it's after 15, we start to the feet kick way up. There's this massive heave and kip, and the dip is ugly. And it's where is it a mechanical breakdown, or is it just a capacity breakdown? It's just this is just how many I do before I have to start compensating elsewhere. And then we can as a coach work on a plan to push that capacity further and further to the right. And it might include intervals and metcons we're talking about, but it's also probably going to include just a lot of hey, you want to get better at bar muscle ups? Great. You're going to do a shitload of strict pull-ups, different pulling variations and stuff like that. Maybe we'll do some kip swings, but maybe it starts with a 10-minute EMOM of 1 muscle up, right? And then next week it's 2 muscle ups in the first minute, and then 10 for the remaining 9 minutes. And it's or 1 for the remaining 9 minutes, and iterating like that. But this is where it's a lot of times athletes, it's hey, I got my muscle up. Can I do muscle ups in today's workout? There's only 15 in the middle of this thruster burpee metcon. It's motherfucker, you did 1. I'm proud of you. You're doing burpee pull-ups, that sort of thing. So
yeah, the nuance here from a remote coaching perspective is if you come visit me, you're starting in that top left corner. And I don't fucking care who you are, because we probably are going to have the conversation of whatever it takes isn't just a high heart rate. You got people who are great at doing a high heart rate. You got people that are great at moving big weight. And you got a lot of people who don't want to do the couch stretch or their dead hangs or their squat holds, that kind of thing. And I am talking about some of the best athletes in the entire fucking world. So that's where we're starting. As a remote coach, a lot of times you got to take the person at their word, and the very first audit that you do is actually skill and capacity. And, it's that weird first week of remote coaching where you're I'm not changing shit. Why don't you do the program and show me what it looks like, right? That is such a huge part of it. That is incredibly important. So that's typically if I'm working with someone and they've been honest about their abilities, I can have a pretty good idea of what to give them and how to trim certain things down. But a lot of it is observation. And, you're making a fucking omelet, you got to break a few eggs. You're going to have some sessions where it's Coach, you asked me to do 4 muscle ups on the minute for 10 minutes and I made it 3 minutes. And it's like, well, you probably should have told me, like that kind of thing. But
yeah,
that's kind of a different conversation. So a lot of times that's what happens in a remote coaching setting. But to put a period on that one, we have just, hey, I want to watch a more open-ended skill session. I want to watch you kind of try to figure this thing out, or I need video of all of your sets from your 10-minute EMOM, that kind of thing. All right. So now we are moving on in this scenario where we're feeling okay enough to say we're going to do some intervals now and just use a specific example. If we are looking at pulling or pressing gymnastics, probably the most friendly thing to do is a cardio interval. Cardio meaning we're not really running interference. The sets and reps really just kind of line up with, I want you to get off the C2 bike with an elevated heart rate and go do 8 chest to bar pull-ups, right? Like we're going to start with lower stakes. There's a lot of levels when it comes to what we can do here. So we have that ability. Then we would move on to maybe say like a gas stimulus where it's like we're going to add more variables. It's going to be your traditional, monostructural weightlifting gymnastics triplet. And we're going to see how you do. And I might even ask you to hold 70 RPMs on the bike and then go do your deficit handstand push-ups. And we're again starting to increase the difficulty. And that difficulty could be like physical, and that difficulty could be on like an athlete IQ level, that sort of thing. So as we move down the line here, athlete IQ makes way more sense to be part of our audit as coaches. It's like, you don't suck at bar muscle ups. You just think everything has to be unbroken. Like, what are you doing? Like, that doesn't make any sense. So it's going to make the most sense over in metcons, but as we work through intervals, that's going to be a way for us. Intervals aren't just the ability to train faster CrossFit. They're also the ability as the coach and the athlete to take a break and reassess.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think thinking about the skill, like the progression, we've gone from like the super basic static movements to like adding a little bit of complexity to now we've got the core-to-extremity thing. But we don't need, when we're talking about intervals, it doesn't need to be ultra high intensity to start, and probably not, right? If you're doing a
more
skill
intensity
capacity,
than no intensity.
Yeah, slightly more. And that could be the difference between, right, like, okay, my skill capacity plan for improving my muscle ups was like, okay, I'm going to do two ring muscle ups every minute for 10 minutes. It's like maybe the interval version is like you get on you do your 2 muscle ups and then you C2 bike in the remainder of the minute, right? So it's like an interval where like the only conflict here is now like my heart rate is slightly elevated, or it's, hey, I personally really like I'll do the gymnastics movement first before the machine, because like ultimately like, and then there becomes a bit of a programming nuance, right? So if like I want to get an athlete better at muscle ups and we're going to work through 10 rounds of 2 muscle ups and 8 calories on a C2 bike, right? So I'm going to use a machine that has no, like you kind of alluded to, no conflict muscularly. The only thing that's going to do is elevate the heart rate slightly. And then I'm going to have a rest period that's just long enough for the athlete to recover enough to be successful in their set of 2 muscle ups, but not so much rest that like, hey, that C2 bike will add up over the course of these 10 rounds of 2 muscle ups. So the idea is, maybe by the 7th and 8th round, like the cumulative effect of an elevated heart rate is actually starting to impact the muscle ups. And then we can work, kind of continue to progress from that perspective. And I agree with what you said about like the stimulus. Like once you're starting to introduce a little bit of intensity, whether it's before or after the movement you're trying to improve on, don't intentionally create muscular interference. Don't make the first skill session you do row muscle up, right? Or ski handstand push-up. Like you're setting yourself up for failure. Will increase that capacity later. I just need you to like be able to do this with your heart rate at 110 instead of 70.
And I feel like it should be obvious what we're looking for here while we're watching this, but there's nuance. Like some people just don't like being uncomfortable and they kind of go like spaz mode on a movement. And that can be a little bit easier to fix than like, I just, again, don't have the general physical preparedness to do a moderate set of, deficit handstand push-ups while my heart rate is elevated. Like there's too much waste being accumulated. As I'm looking at this, I would need this for bar muscle ups. Like I would pass all of the tests up to skill, and then I just don't have the capacity for them. I don't, they come up for me 4 times a year and I do them. And then I'm always like the person after the open, like, got to start practicing my bar muscle ups. I suck at these and I shouldn't. That kind of thing. And it becomes more and more apparent as we make our way across this and end up at the interval and at the metcon. So we're just, looking in a similar lens at the idea of like, do you have an issue with the way that you move your body? Do you have an issue with the capacity and the movement? And or do you have an issue with GPP? Strength to body weight ratio, like the more broad implications, that kind of thing. So we are introducing intensity in a tiered system. Those tiers are, hey, this is a short workout before it's a medium, before it's a long. This is a cardio stimulus before it's gas, before it's muscle. It is low volume before it's high volume. And there's nuance again with the volume thing, because we could be saying volume in a set, or we could be saying volume over the course of an entire workout. So a lot of different ways to introduce that. Last but not least, we are going to audit you doing pulling and pressing gymnastics in a metcon. You get maybe one interval in a competition, and affiliates are doing a lot more metcons than intervals when there's gymnastics involved, or they should be. And that's when shit can really go wrong. Like if you've made it to this point as the coach and the athlete, we're probably going to be able to cook something up to fuck with your movement. And again, it could be the stimulus, it could be the movement combinations, could be the volume, all those different things. But we want to see the real deal. And we could even, maybe there's one more column that's competition, because, different things happen in a metcon in competition than a metcon after a rest day in your gym as the very first thing that you do. But we're just going to essentially continue to audit the way that you are moving through these things. And we want to see all of it. We want to see short, medium, and long. We want to see, all the different variations of the stimulus. We want to see different volume. Is it more that it's challenging for you with that really high heart rate? Because like for me, that's going to be more of the issue. Like I can do a workout that's like more muscle endurance-y that has higher volume of a particular movement, because there's basically more standing around in it. So it's not always going to be the same thing that's going to be an issue for an athlete. All right. We are now moving on from the audit phase to the planning phase. What are we going to do about the things that we learned in relation to this stuff? And this, at this point, may or may not get more specific to the movements. We're just going to keep talking and find out what happens, basically. So, whoa, power just go out?
Yeah, kind of.
That was weird. The lights flashed, but the computer did not. Interesting. All right. Well, if the podcast ends here, it's been real, ladies and gentlemen. All right. So we're in the planning phase. We're looking at mobility and stability relating to pulling gymnastics and pressing gymnastics. Hunter, what are we going to do about someone's mobility relating to a dead hang or a handstand hold?
Well, I mean, we're going to do both of those things, but we're also like, this is where the coach comes in handy. It's like identifying the exact kind of root cause is really important here, but it can be hard. And it's usually not just one thing, right? It's like, what is the mechanism for this limitation? Is it something genetic? Is it like body anthropometry? Or is it like a result of the fact that your desk job has you hunched over a computer for 8 hours a day, right? So having a plan, I'm like, from a resource perspective, I'll like, K-Star is still my go-to, from back in the day, sticking a lacrosse ball in a trap, grabbing a floss band, wrapping a shoulder, stuff like that. Like you have to target, like, I think the nice thing about this is like, if you're an athlete who's willing to help out, if you're an athlete who's willing to kind of put in the work, I'm kind of, and also like what I'll say here is like, I'm somebody who I will do everything I can to figure something out on my own long before I pay somebody to do it. And call that me being cheap, frugal, or
you sound like
more
a coach,
just
Hunter.
A problem solver. But I'm going to throw a shitload of stuff at the wall and see what sticks. So if my shoulder mobility is a limitation, it's a it's a single lacrosse ball in the trap and the scap and trying to get that thing moving. It's a foam roller, a double lacrosse ball in my thoracic spine to make sure I can achieve extension. It's, flossing the shoulder. It's finding and all of this is being done with kind of the test retest kind of concept in mind, right? Like, okay, my shoulder mobility sucks. I flossed both shoulders for 2 minutes and now I go dead hang again. Did my shoulder mobility improve? Yes. Great. This is a tool that can be used. Did I use a single lacrosse ball and mash the shit out of some soft tissue? Holy fuck, that worked really well. That's actually now the number one thing that I know I need to do before I go overhead in gymnastics, right? Or whatever movement that we're talking about. So obviously, this is where it comes in handy to have a coach, right? Because there gets to be a limit as to what you as an athlete have the capacity to kind of do on your own. But if you're a coach, like knowing what these resources are, like I said, K-Star, both the written books that he's got. It's right here. The Supple Leopard books. Aaron, I don't remember his last name, but the Squat University dude. We have the book Rebuilding Milo that he established. K-Star wrote the foreword to that. These are all excellent resources for I'd say even more so, they're great. They provide excellent tools, but they also educate you as a coach on again, what is actually happening here? Why does this person's overhead mobility suck? I noticed that their elbows bent when they kip. I noticed that they lean back when they're up against the wall in a handstand hold. What does all this stuff mean is the first step, and then what are the tools that I have at my disposal to actually improve those positions? And then as the athlete, it's did this thing work, yes or no? And that's how we kind of assess okay, this is the plan for improving my overhead position, for example, or improving my stability, hanging support at the top of the rings, hanging from a pull-up bar, whatever it is.
Yeah, when I think about mobility, I split it up into two camps, one being that test retest model. And I urge coaches, if you hypothesize too much about this shit and don't go get in a couch stretch and don't go do the banded distraction and do the lacrosse ball and do the floss, I just don't think you can really teach it in the same way. And the barrier to entry, again, if we're talking about do we want to argue whether you should be able to do a muscle up if you're a coach? Totally different conversation. Barrier to entry is pretty damn low for you to go. I think that next level of learning is having the book out on the gym floor and actually doing the thing. I think that can be really helpful. But I think about the test retest model very much being a singular mobility session where we can figure out what's going on and then the way that you would get ready to execute on a particular movement. And then on the other side of it, I think things like static stretching and yoga poses and things of that nature, even the, banded distraction stuff just sort of helps you, I think, target areas a little bit better. You are really missing out if you are not either executing on or programming that sort of thing after the movement is done and there's really good blood flow and warmth in a particular area. You can make serious changes in your mobility if you have a post-workout routine, and shocker, that's just really good for cool down as well. So that can be part of it. And then the other side would just be maybe the activation piece of we're starting to make these changes pre-workout, on rest days, post-workout. Can we target, it's the bridge to stability. Can we target the musculature with band pull-aparts, with, glute bridges, with banded walks, all of that stuff? That to me starts to show the athlete how they can use the new tools that they have and then what stability work should feel like. So stability work then becomes do the thing. I'm not good at dead hangs. I'm not good at handstand holds. Guess what? You know what's awesome for those things? Reasonable volume. And if you follow Misfit Athletics programming, you have a 10-minute cap on 5 minutes of holds basically every day. You have a dead hang from a pull-up bar. You have your overhead squat holds and front squat holds and squat holds and your handstand holds. And, maybe there's the traction variation where I'll have athletes do hang from the rings, but their feet are on a box so they can kind of modulate their body weight a little bit more and have it not be grip intensive. That to me is the start of the stability conversation. Let's express the thing that like has the fault in it through mobility, and then going back to it and seeing how we're sort of dealing with that. And then now we're starting to bridge over to the gray area between stability and strict training, which is what on the website or in our programming we call secondary accessory. So you're doing like 5 rounds of 15 reps of something, or you're doing 5 rounds of like really light farmer's carries, or, walking around with kettlebells or dumbbells over your head. We're making our way down the line of, I understand how to get myself into a better position. I understand how to use the muscles. Now let's train the muscles in a low stakes environment. That's how we start to sort of make our way from left to right in the spectrum that I create in my head.
Yeah, I think this like starts to just looking at the spreadsheet, like strict variations and low rep almost kind of like match up a little bit, like skill and the strict variations.
There's a stuff. I like to think that I want to teach the athlete what the bridge is from one column to the next. So we get into strict variations. That's going to be your primary accessory, where you're doing less reps. You're doing your strict pull-ups. You're doing your seated dumbbell strict press. Maybe you're doing less reps of a horizontal pull so you can get into a more challenging position. Like I'll start people with the 5x15 inverted barbell row, but then I want to see them get into the 6x10 where they're like either close to horizontal with the ground or even like elevated where their feet are up on a bench and doing that sort of thing. And again, as we get into the strict variations, that's when we can build that strength and understand movement patterns. Like, I think for me to understand strict gymnastics, I had to understand strict pressing, like the idea of a powerlifter saying in your strict press, like, tense up to the point where you feel like every muscle in your whole body is going to explode. And then that idea of we don't even really have muscles, we're just one giant muscle because of connective tissue, can tell you how like knee extension and glute activation makes your strict press go up 5 pounds, that sort of thing. Then watching gymnasts, why are they so rigid when they're moving? It's the same idea, right? Like when the system breaks down, I know both of us did a bunch of engineering classes, but like, if your bridge is overextended at one of the beams, bad boy's going to fall and break, right? So to create a strong body before you even use it is a concept that like people really got to understand. Like powerlifters saying squeeze the bar like you're trying to break it. That's so that there's no slack in the system. So that when you go to deadlift, your scaps don't get pulled forward, that kind of idea.
And I think that's that's reflective of the understanding that like CrossFit by nature is a compound movement, right? So none of your, your shoulder strength in isolation is not like, that could be a problem. It could be why your strict handstand push-ups aren't great, but we're not going to just do like front raises and presses and lateral raises. We're not going to like beef up the singular individual muscles, right, that compose of the shoulder that help me strict press, right? We need to train these movements in whether it is a strict version, an isometric version, we want to get better at toes to bar, like do some L-sits, that sort of thing. You still, as an athlete and a coach, have to understand that we need to train these movements in conjunction with the entire system. This is not an isolated thing. That's not to say there's not a place for like small accessories or whatever that strengthen, or activation drills that strengthen or turn on the rotator cuff, for example. But like when we're actually training these, we have to have this understanding that it's like the strict press is a reflection of your upper body strict pressing strength, but to say that like, you're just going to be a limp noodle from the shoulders down and then expect to strict press any semblance of weight, like nobody would make that assumption. Just reminding athletes that like, hey, that your body works as an entire unit, not as a whole bunch of individual component parts.
Yeah, and I mean, my mind goes to like 100 different things as you're talking through that, and it's like, well, we are using seated neutral grip strict press, but like it's kind of comfy if you weigh 230 pounds, right? Like I get to move weight again. How do you feel when you kick upside down? And gravity is not that friendly, right? to get ultra specific within this concept, I am going to once again work left to right with the way that I'm thinking about programming. So I want to early on, say it's phase 1 for an athlete, I want to be doing the pulling and pressing in as many planes as possible. We know that that works really well. So I'm going to have an athlete doing strict pull-ups. I'm going to have an athlete doing some form of barbell row or ring row. I'm going to have someone doing hand over hand sled pull. I'm getting a lot of things covered with the pulling. Then we go into the pressing, and we have, at our disposal, we're working from those safer things like the dumbbell press. We've got dips, we've got incline bench, we've got barbells, we've got dumbbells, we have ring dips, we have push-ups, we have ring push-ups, we have handstand push-up variations. We're going to work our way through those things. And then as the athlete is coming along, it's more about making sure that those different planes of pressing are showing up at different places within the actual program. So like, I don't need there to be a hand over hand sled pull every single week of the entire off season. Hopefully that's turning into, it's actually in a metcon, or we're doing legless rope climbs, or we're doing high rep, gymnastics pulling in a metcon, that sort of thing. But I am still going to, if it's a weakness for an athlete, make sure that like those different planes are showing up in their training. They're upside down, they're pressing, they're doing dips, they're doing push-ups. It can just be put into a bunch of different places as opposed to we're doing accessory work to start, because that is a great place to start.
What are you putting in this plan row here? Is this more like an actual nuts and bolts, like
Well, I'm glad because this is an audio
podcast.
I'm glad that because this is an audio podcast that we're doing right by the listener while we're speaking through this, because I don't know how great it would be. I think if we did this episode again, I might fill this in before we start.
Sure.
I thought it would be cool for people to see us type into it, and then I'm typing and I'm like, we are like filling dead air while the other person's typing through it. But yes, in a particular athlete, we would be going through and planning out what this progression looks like. How do I get this better? How do I get this better? How do I get this better? All the way from left to right. And it is for every athlete, because dealing with the fact that they're immobile or hypermobile in a particular area, even if they already have those other things, is really important. So each part of the plan, especially related to what time it is in a season, is incredibly important regardless of the level that they're at. So then we move over and it's like, okay, again, the strict variations, we're going to be hitting all, probably early in the year, all planes of pressing and pulling in this environment. And then as the year goes on, spreading them out more into skill intervals, metcons, like that kind of thing. So then we get into the low rep planning phase, and that's really just about the opportunities that you are giving athletes to continue to practice under supervision. So how often, it's like in a remote coaching setting, you might be like, any cell that is pink means you need to film it and send it to me. If we are still just practicing and it isn't really a skill and capacity type session, then that's what's going to go in the program. It's going to be like, I want you to do a 15-minute bike at forever pace, and I want you to get off the bike every 3 minutes and do a really small set and just show me what that looks like that kind of thing. That's how we are going to plan to continue to try and bridge the gap from like, we're making progress here, but we actually got to like do the thing. And that way you can be like, okay, so these look good in real time. To use the chest to bar as an example, that common fault in the chest to bar is not using your hips. And it looks like in real time a big, beautiful, slow butterfly pull up, but they're actually using their legs to lift them up. And then they're, sort of just falling back through the bar. Whereas we want the legs in front to create leverage over the hip. And then the hip pops to do that.
I'm going to make a minor audit here. Tell me what you think.
Yeah. Go for it. So again, in that low rep setting, we're just continuing to monitor practice. That's what the plan is. It is written out. It is, we are 2 times a week going to actually practice this thing. And it's in their programming. And you can do the same thing at the affiliate level. It's like, hey, I think, I overhear this conversation like once a month. How do I get better at this? Do you think it's appropriate for me to do this once a week, twice a week? Can I do this 3 times a week? And then the more aggressive they are as a human, they'll say, can I do this 5 times a week? And it's like, you don't need to snatch 5 times a week. Okay. Like, let's take it easy. So it's, hey, I think it's appropriate for you to work on this twice a week. feel free to come get me. Feel free to video it and to show it to a coach, that kind of thing. That is how we are planning and actually like trying to move forward in a linear way with just that skill low rep situation.
I moved the word skill from to the left one column.
So it's correct, but it should be on the right. I read this left to right.
/skill?
Yeah.
Really? My thought is just like this is semantics at its finest. Like,
yeah.
But I'm just like, so when I'm thinking, so what is, and maybe I'll just ask the question, how do you distinguish between, in the planning phase, what is the difference between low rep and capacity? And because that's kind of the reason that I moved this over, like, especially in the audit phase, it's like, what is the skill and low rep to me come in hand? It's like, you know, hop up and show me one or two of these muscle ups that you want to work on. Like, I can assess your skill in this low rep setting, right? Yeah. And the capacity side is more like, okay, what happens when you have to do 30 muscle ups for time, when the plan is like, hey, we're in the skill section, we're like, hey, the plan is you're going to work on the 10-minute EMOM of chest to bar pull-ups, where the single point of focus that you're working on is using your hips, staying behind the bar. The thing that you were talking about, we're focusing on that very specific skill element of the broader movement. And then in the capacity kind of section, it's like, okay, we're not as focused on the very single specific nuance. We're actually here, it's 5 chest to bar pull-ups every minute for 10 minutes. We're trying to literally increase capacity with less of a concern of the very specific movement, like a component of the movement.
So I'm
Answer all my questions.
I think I can answer this potentially with something I'm doing right now in real time with an athlete. A competition gets announced and there's a handful of fucking weird things or things that we're not working on. The very first session that I program is like, fuck around and find out. It is so open-ended that it's like, I want to see you do this thing, but there's no pressure to do 6 sets versus 10 versus 1 versus 2. Like, let's not work on it for too long, but like, let's just feel this thing out. The next thing would be, I am going to say, I want 6 easy sets. I want to see you do the movement in a repeated fashion to see, you know, we're working with a low rep learner, a high rep learner, like what do we need to do to move forward? And then we get into capacity where it's like, I'm telling you, it's 6x4. It's 6x4 and it's at this particular time. So that's the way that I'm working with the athlete, where it's planning and auditing in real time, basically happening simultaneously, because our time frame is kind of short. So that's where I create those like delineations between those particular things, but it is 100% semantics of like, we would have to provide the specific definition. But I do agree that it is much easier to lump together the like, show me what you can do and work on the skill is one column, versus capacity building is kind of its own thing. That
I think, I just think of capacity as like the first step in which just like, okay, we've got the movement. I need to take you from like, you physically can't, it's, you know, it's 30. If I tell you to do 40 strict handstand push-ups, it's going to take you 12 days because like you could do 10 today. That's going to take you a while, but like 40, it's like, I got to come back tomorrow. So like, how do we start to build the broad capacity versus like the skill and the low rep? To me is like the bare bones, like what does 1, 2, 3 reps look like? Whereas capacity is more like, let's generate some volume regardless of the set size.
I'm not asking you to do 30 of anything that look like shit. Like that to me is just where I'm drawing the line of, we're not working on capacity until we can do the movement.
Correct.
And the recipe for capacity is very simple and so effective. We actually start with the highest amount of volume, but it is in a large amount of sets. So if we were like, we're going to work on muscle ups, we are going to, this is a semifinals level athlete. The most muscle ups that I want them to do in a capacity building session is 40. Maybe that's 10 sets of 4, right? With a bunch of rest in between. That gives us basically we're developing the movement pattern and the musculature simultaneously. And it's important to note that 40 number is very relative.
Sure.
Like that low end could be 20, 10, 15, whatever. On the other end, we're working our way across 7 to 9 weeks, and we're going to do 30 in the last week, lowest volume, 3 sets of 10. We have iterated on it's 4, then 5, then 6, then 7, then 8, and we're working our way down. And that's where we are taking the concept of we've taught you how to move in an iterative process, and we've taught your muscles how to handle this thing in an iterative process. Now we are leaning towards like the bridge from capacity to intervals is intensity inside of the capacity building sessions.
Yeah, this is where, as the coach, the planning out kind of the week by week, day by day sort of like actual programming becomes important. And This is where like, your knowledge as a coach of programming as a coach is important. Like you said, this like I think it's important to like what's the end goal, right? That's like, maybe if we're going to do a test retest sort of thing, it's like what does 30 muscle ups for time look like in week 1 and then in week 10, and then we back plan from there. I think that's the easiest way to do it, and your explanation is right. It's like we're going to start the most volume is actually going to occur, assuming the athlete can handle the volume. We can maybe talk about somebody who's like, hey, I want to get better at pull-ups, but like the most I've ever done in a session anyway is 20. Like if I tell them to do 100, am I going to fucking kill this person, right? So there might be a kind of a building phase a bit of the capacity. Yeah, of the capacity. And then, like you said, it kind of inverts into like, well, the volume gets lower, but the intensity is higher, right? 30 muscle ups done as 3 sets of 10 is very different than 50 muscle ups done as 25 sets of 2, right? That's a very different kind of stimulus. So like to start, if there is going to be like the test retest, obviously you've got those on kind of the bookends of the plan, so to speak, and then back planning from there, I think is the easiest way to do it. You start on the front end, and like all of a sudden by week 5, it's like, fuck, why do I have this guy doing like 6 sets of 14 muscle ups? Like, how does this math even work out? It's like, so back planning a little bit, thinking like the volume is down, the intensity though is up, assuming that's the overall goal.
The other thing to get specific on the actual domains we're talking about is how often you can do these things. And that has to do both with the movement and the rest of the program. It's like, what is the actual constraint? Because high rep pulling, the constraint is just the movement. If we do high rep pulling too often, you're probably going to get hurt. You're hanging from your body weight. You are putting kind of that like slow twitch volume onto fast twitch musculature, which it doesn't like very much. And when it comes to the pressing, your constraints are probably going to be a little bit more what else is in the programming. Like you can work on strict pressing 3 times a week, even with, if it's done appropriately, even with like a master's athlete. But what are you giving up to make that happen? You're not doing any pressing in any of your metcons and intervals. That's probably a problem. Or you're not doing any pressing, dynamic pressing, your push press, your split jerk, any of that stuff in your strength work. So we can and need to do the pressing more often. We shouldn't do it with the pulling. The pulling is kind of unless you're really going all the way back to like stability work. Like don't fuck up your athlete with 3 days a week of high rep upper body gymnastics pulling, like that kind of thing.
It's just more dynamic. I think there's like the upper body pressing stuff is very self-limiting, right? The biggest concern is probably literally more so somebody's neck and head versus like the muscular fatigue of doing a lot of presses. The pulling obviously has other implications too. You're gonna shred the athlete's hands, or their elbow's gonna be all fucked up, or their shoulders all fucked up. Like bicep, rhabdo, bicep, rhabdo. So yeah, here's a good question, because this is like along these lines. I'm an athlete, like I'm working on my chest to bar pull up capacity. It's not that great to begin with. Should I even be doing it in a metcon or an interval? Or if I've got a plan where I'm like doing this capacity building, do I temporarily sacrifice putting it, actually doing it in a CrossFit workout, whether it's a metcon or interval, until the capacity's there? Or do I apply kind of a GPP mentality and be like, no, I still got to do my capacity building, my skill stuff, but like, yeah, I just need, maybe the coach has to help me scale it or put it into a metcon intelligently, or do I just stick with capacity building?
Yeah, it depends on where you're at, both in your personal journey and the season. Because I love staying to the left side of this matrix if it's early in the season, even for some of the best athletes in the world, because we are truly creating a base and a foundation for improving capacity, like decreasing injury rates. Like there's so much that happens. And so that's the way that I'm thinking about that. We get further into the season, if you have specific goals, like it has to be all of these things. Like the coach has to figure out, like, how do I make it possible for them to work on all of these things over the course of, like, the more things you have to work on, the longer timeline it needs to be stretched out on. So what do I mean by that? I can't have someone work on B, C, D, E, F, and G on Monday. That doesn't make any sense, but I could if it was 6 years long, right? So like, what is the period of time that I have to spread this stuff out over to make sure that we're checking the boxes? And that kind of brings us to the intervals, and probably is the perfect segue for it, because it depends on the time of year. If we are at the point where we can introduce these intervals, is this someone who is doing the movement under fatigue for the first time? It has to be highly personalized. It has to be those examples that we already gave. Is this someone who's on the other end of the spectrum and we're in a comp prep or a phase 3? Like, we are doing all of the variations. We're doing short, medium, and long. We're doing cardio, gas, and muscle. We are doing low volume, high volume, big sets, little sets. We're doing all of that different variation, because out of that, we get general physical preparedness and athlete IQ. Like, the athletes got to know what to do in the moment. So many times people think they have a weakness, and it is a weakness of the mind and strategy. It's not actually the particular movement. They get FOMO when someone else does the strict handstand push-ups unbroken, even though if they did 2 or 3 sets, they would win at the end. They never find that out. That's never something that enters their brain, because it's like, they're getting ahead of me. And it's like, well, their strategy sucks. Or they're way better than you. Sorry. Like, you know what I mean? So again, that's kind of the spectrum there. And I am speeding up a little bit, because we're not going to talk about the execution phase on this podcast, because we're closing in on an hour and 40 minutes. But the idea is the same with the metcons. Like, it's iteration. I want to know as a coach that an athlete can have some space in between in an interval to think about the way that they're moving, to audit their sets and their strategy and the athlete IQ piece. We also have the opportunity to increase general physical preparedness by just going faster, that sort of thing. But that ultimate expression that we're looking for is the metcon. What happens in all of these different scenarios when it comes to skill? Like, some people have a lot of capacity and not a lot of skill, right? You kind of just give up as a coach. You're like, well, it came in first. I don't know why they lean back so far in their row before they even use their legs. They're better than everyone else at it, and they're really bad at Olympic lifting, so I probably should go over there. It's hard as a coach sometimes, but like, people do have capacity without skill, just for, sort of genetic reasons or athletic background or whatever, that sort of thing. So we've got an iterative process here. It's probably the easiest way to do my final thoughts. Like, we've built capacity within these movements by doing appropriate volume in a linear progression type of fashion. We move over into intervals and really take a look at all of these different scenarios and, where are they good? Where are they not? How can we improve this? What part of the audit while you're watching the interval is the thing that helps you get them over the hump? And then last but not least, that iteration has to lead to metcons, both in the affiliate setting and the competitive setting. Like, that's the thing that we do. That's the 3 to 4 times a week thing at most levels. And then obviously that extends further, but like, what happens when, metcons are hard and there's a billion different combinations, that's sort of put in there.
Yeah. I think like the nice thing about this, like this matrix and this layout, is that it also, again, it forces you as the coach to start from like the bare bones foundation ground floor of like what's happening. You can't, if you have an athlete who comes to you and says, I suck at muscle ups, I want to get better at muscle ups, and you jump to the like, okay, let's go. Like, here's the program, here's the muscle up program. It's like you've skipped a whole bunch of steps, right, in this process that that you've made, Drew, and then like it might indicate to me that the coach doesn't actually have like this depth of knowledge that's going to result in like long-term progress and sustainability, right? It's like if I could have somebody who maybe like in the example that you gave, someone who has raw capacity but dog shit skill, like I might be able to get them to that 30 unbroken muscle ups, number. They all look like shit, but we got there. And it's like, at what point is the trade-off, worth it versus not? You're close to the season, you're preparing for a competition. It's a bit of kind of by all means necessary. Got it. There's a time and a place for that, especially when we're talking about, either your affiliate athlete, your quarterfinalist, maybe your semifinal hopeful, that sort of thing. Like there's really not that many situations where we're going to like suggest where we would say like, yeah, let's jump the gun and just like, let's just send it, build as much capacity without any consideration for like a foundational understanding of what's going on. And like, hey, the fact is that you have no concept of what the hollow and the arch position are and your like midline stability. Like we have to start there because, and it's also, you have to think about this, like what other things is that going to improve with the athlete? Like there's just so much crossover from movement to movement in CrossFit, like in general, and it all comes down to like the idea that you have control of your midline and you can stabilize it. You can actually transfer force from the biggest movers in your body to the little ones, right? The core-to-extremity concept. Like this is kind of where, circling back to the beginning, like having an understanding of why CrossFit works as well as it does and why like the methodology is pretty genius and actually has been like empirically demonstrated to work pretty fucking well. Like if you don't have that understanding as a coach, like you're just, it's like, I know how to drive the car, I don't know how to build it.
I lied. I do have final thoughts.
Love it. That was my final thought, though.
We will keep this under 2 hours. Almost positive that that's going to happen. Oh, also, I cut out all of the dead silences and the ums and ahs. So this is actually probably only like an hour and a half for people in real life. Something that we completely left out that is so important here, and you have to learn it through mistakes, is the idea that patience is a rite of passage as a coach and as an athlete. You will skip the steps as an athlete. You will skip the steps as a coach. There are so many reasons why you would. You got a client that wants it all now, and you're, fucking having them do dead hangs and roly-polies and, doing jump rope singles, and they're going to get pissed at you. And maybe they leave. But then you do it enough that you really stand by the tried and true methods that it takes. And the rite of passage in your coach-athlete relationship is that, like, they're going to be willing to trust that and take it one step at a time. So there is so much. There's a combined 30 years of history between Hunter and I having this conversation of both personally and professionally potentially skipping these steps or not knowing that they existed. And then you iterate on them and you realize that, like, it's fun for me to break down a world-class athlete into the fact that they can't, like, dead hang or do the couch stretch, because it reframes this idea. Like there are some people that, like, I have lost as clients because they were just, give me a brick wall to run through.
Give me the answers to the test.
But they just wanted intensity to be one thing. And it's like, keep sucking at this thing. And I can't punch you and make it better. You can't hit your head against the wall and make it better. Like, we have to work on this variation of the thing. And there's so many different iterations of it. You're going to have clients that only want to lift heavy. Like, you want get strong, heavy barbell. It's like, well, you're fucking slow. So, or like anytime you're asked to do 21 of these bad boys, you pass out. Like, there's different categories here. We got to work on all of it. So I can tell you that you need to be patient, but in the long run, you're going to have to learn through trial and error. Like, just be open to the idea that the way that you're currently doing things, if they're not working very well, slowing them down might be the idea that you're missing there. Woo! We do it?
Hour 45 on the timer. It's going to be like a 12-minute podcast after you cut out all the bullshit.
Yeah, cut out bullshit. There is actually one of the AI tools is like smart content or something like that, but that scares me. That scares me a little bit because it makes me smart clips and they're not smart at all. Yeah, it's like Hunter's new golf ball. And I'm like, I don't think that goes on social.
Hold on a second. Let's pump the brakes, guys.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Misfit podcast. If you are looking for our individual programming, head to the link in bio on Instagram. Get signed up on Fitter or Strivey. If you are, well, also stay there. Stay in the link in bio and click on camp at CrossFit Roots, January 30th through February 1st. TeamMisfit.com for affiliate programming. Click on sign up now. You get a 2-week free trial at Sugar WOD, Stream Fit, or Push Press. We will see you next week.
Later.
Misfits!
All right, you ragtag bunch of misfits.
You're a scrappy little misfit, just like me.
Biggest bunch of misfits I ever seen either.